For the PressCorps, I'm Geoffrey Jennings, and I'm joined by Foxhole Lead Developer Mark for a one-on-one developer discussion with the question order decided by a community poll on the r/foxholegame subreddit. Mark, thank you for taking the time off the clock to do this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Full disclosure, Siege Camp has officially sponsored the PressCorps by providing one-time funding for our streaming computer that runs 24/7. Runs the 24/7 radio station on Twitch. For more info on the PressCorps radio station, visit the PressCorps Foxhole Desk YouTube channel. So let's get right with this top question here. Out of 674 votes on that subreddit poll, this one was by far the biggest one, which is alts. And I should have done alts/griefing because it's certainly one that's been in the public consciousness. So let's get right to it. It's impossible to get a full picture on how much actual damage alternate accounts with malicious intent do unless the dev team provides detailed data on all moderation decisions. That's a hard no from you still, correct?
Providing, yes, no.
Yeah, hard no. And even if you said yes, there's a certain population that I don't know how much they believe anyway. So piecemeal or none at all, that's kind of where we're at. So regardless of how much actual damage alts do in the game, in comparison to the overall population's experience, whether or not you're in the camp that they are single-handedly ruining the game, or whether they're just a complete anomaly that does absolutely no damage whatsoever, what we know for certain is the effects of the perception of alting, the subsequent witch hunts in the game, the arguing on Reddit and Discord, the driving away of new players because their inexperience was interpreted as malicious action, etc., etc., etc. These things we know have dominated community discourse for some time. So with that being said, what has been done to combat that, and how do you plan to further combat that?
Yeah, so we obviously investigate every single report that is submitted to through the report system. So that's obviously the most direct way that we tackle it. There's many other ways behind the scenes that we do. There's also tools in the games, like the stockpile logs, for it's more surfacing more information that would help mitigate players from wanting to play in that way. And I think that moving forward, this is a problem that it, you know is always going to exist to some degree, so long as players are able to go and at the end of the day, you can't. People can people can play on different computers if they want to. They can even be two. It could be even their friend who plays or something. So it's something that's gonna it's existed in the past. It exists and it'll still exist in the future. But
let's explore some of those
we can
options.
improve it. Yeah.
So, for instance, you've disabled Steam Family Share. That's been around for I think more than a year now. So that's not an option
Correct.
anymore.
Yes.
There's a message in the main menu that warns you of alting if what actually triggers that, or can you disclose that? Is it maybe you're coming in from a different...
No, we can't.
Okay.
Those are the things that we cannot talk about because it's for obvious reasons, right? And this is
for what reason? As obvious as they are, can you state them?
The more that players who would these type of players, I would say, this category of players knows about these systems, then it's easier for them to circumvent it at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's as simple as that. I'll leave it at that.
So then what kind of logs and metrics do you think are safe to implement that haven't been implemented yet? So for instance, we have the stockpile ones. So whenever you go up to a stockpile, you can see who's taken what from the stockpile and who's delivered as well. Any way of expanding on that? Maybe like a wrench log or individual player logs of what they've brought from one place to another.
Yeah, I think that is the direction that we're going to explore. When I said at the beginning that we're obviously dealing with this problem in through the reports. We're dealing with it through other internal mechanisms that we don't talk about, and then there is going in the direction of actually more tools in game itself to mitigate such issues. And we're just going to keep working on it. And it's as simple as that. It's one of those things where it's a hard problem for every game. It's a hard problem for every online gaming community, and it almost doesn't really matter what I say, if that makes sense, because you know whatever I say only depends on far as anyone is going to believe it. And so I think for us on this topic, we would prefer to just continue to chip away at the problem as we've always done, like we've done with the stockpile logs, like we've done with the Steam family share, like we've done, like we're going to continue to do, and as we've done with all these other things that are happening behind the scenes. And it's up for the players to judge. And if they're unhappy, believe me, they're going to voice it, as as
As they
this,
have.
as they have. And I feel like it's always been difficult to talk about this sort of thing because I don't want to convince anyone, if I have to be frank, because I don't think it matters that much in the end. What actually matters is the individual experience that you're having, like as a player. If I can tell you all the things that sound nice in the world, and if you go in there and you have a bad experience with such a player, none of what I say is going to matter. But at the same time, if you've been playing the game for 5 years and you've never even encountered an alt, right, then this isn't even relevant to you. So I really feel that this sort of topic, it's happy to answer the questions, happy to talk about it, but I just feel like it's what matters more to me is what we're actually doing, and what matters more to me is the feedback we're hearing, and whether it's I've never even had this problem, or this is a big problem for me. And then we'll hear it, take the feedback, we'll go behind the scenes, continue to work at it, and then again, it's like it's ultimately up to the it's up to ultimately we're going to hear about it, right? We're going to hear about it either way. So
So actually, you know what?
yeah.
In terms not just alting but also griefing, which is kind of one and the same, but it's just a slightly different. There's alting is that maybe someone from another faction does it. Regardless, what happens when you resolve a griefing related ticket? Does the person who submitted the ticket get a message back saying, "Hey, we've solved your problem," or "We've closed your ticket"? Do they get a message back?
Right now they don't. So, but I think that that is an issue, and I would like to give better feedback on that end, right? So, when you submit a report right now, the resolution is unknown, but I'm not against trying to change that in the future. I think giving feedback is important there, and I think players that submit reports want that feedback. And I think that's exactly one of the things. Yeah, that's the perfect example of what I was just talking about there. It's like we hear the feedback on it, and rather than me coming on here and promising all these things in the future that we're going to do, which is not going to make that person happy, we take it, go behind the scenes. It might take us, it's not going to happen overnight, but we can try to chip away at that problem and hopefully make that improvement. And it'll be there. I think with these, sort of things, the one thing that we found is when when there is when a improvement is made, we just end up not hearing about that problem anymore. um, and that's a good sign, right? So I think that's kind of one of the metrics, like on top of looking at the number of reports, because we track number of reports of, like, this is the most we have the most number of support tickets for this problem. We have the second most number of tickets of this problem. We just see those tickets. If there's an improvement, we see those number of tickets start to come down, right?
Mhm.
And then nobody will talk about anything. Nobody will say, "Hey, that got better." Right? We just stop hearing about it, and that's good, right? And then it doesn't matter. See, so that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Is like,
But there doesn't seem to be much closure,
the
because when you type
the
alt,
discourse,
yeah,
the discourse, the talking about it is like, what you tell me, what matters more? Okay, the number going down, or um, like someone makes a post on Reddit, and that's like, like, which one actually matters more? The thing that's impacting players, or how loud the voice is
yeah,
somewhere on Reddit?
it's kind of like if a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't really make a sound, doesn't really matter, right? I think there are people that are in the camp of, if we don't get closure on this, if we don't even see it improving, it might as well seem like you haven't done anything at all, because it's not, because I think what I've noticed in this discourse, this long running discourse over many years, is that it's not just the people that have been wronged, and you can, however you can take that, and not just, maybe like I personally was griefed, but rather my whole faction was griefed, or my regiment was griefed, but also just people who are unsatisfied with not seeing seemingly any kind of closure, or seemingly any kind of progress. And I know there's the fact that you can't share details of the system, because then people would game it, people would chip away at that system piece by piece. But I don't know. For instance, there's some games that when they catch a cheater, there's a server-wide message that goes, "Hey, we caught this cheater." I don't know. It sounds shallow, but for whatever reason, people seem to latch onto that idea, and people seem to like it. Any consideration there?
What is what is so? I guess let's like talk about more concrete things there,
Sure.
right? So in terms of giving more feedback, when a report is submitted, we're in agreement that that would be a pretty good thing, right? And I think I want to see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the less concrete thing of just a loud voice in the community, um, I just feel like, again, that's up to the community, and if we're improving things, maybe that voice will be more quiet for a while, um, or then if we're not, and they're going to be loud, and then we're going to hear about it, and that's, and at the end of the day, that's how it works, right? And that's how your game gets better. It's like people. This is why you're asking me this question, right? Because you want to,
Well, it's like
because the
it's the
community
monthly
was
alt thread, right?
because the community was vocal about it, and then now you're relaying that feedback, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that you giving you relaying this, even though I much rather talk about other things, it's part of the thing, right? It's part of the
Mhm.
whole system, of getting the feedback, making improvements, and then looking at the results, right? So, and then it's like, as you listed, those improvements that were made um, over the years, like the family share when you're logging in, the the warning, and the systems associated with that warning, and the logs. These are a result of player feedback, right? These are a result of that monthly, or whatever thread that you were talking about, and it says it's we're gonna focus on things that we can do, right? Like, we gotta we gotta focus on things that are in our control, and it's not in our control in terms of hearing about the complaints, but it is our control to, for example, try to provide some of the feedback when someone wants to support, or to do some of those things that we've done in the past, or to improve or add to things like the stockpile log system. Those are in our control, right?
Is
We
it safe
can,
to is it safe to say that there are a lot of metrics that we can't see, but you can?
I don't know what a lot means, because there's nothing relative to measure with it, but
Well, I
there
mean,
are metrics,
like
right?
metrics, like you can see where a player, have been. Like you can just see. Is that a metric, for instance? I don't know if you can disclose that, but
I mean, that's,
developer
yeah.
side, yeah.
It would be very bad if we disclose things like that.
Okay.
Again, because players can circumvent them. But of course, there's is data there that we're looking at and that we rely on when these problems arise and when a report comes in, right? So yeah, I mean that's at the end of the day, it's that it's like we're gonna do what's in our control, which is spending time and resources on improving the system, spend time resources adding in things like surfacing more stockpile log type of stuff. And it's just going to be an ongoing battle. And just like as we're sitting here right now, you're gonna let me know when when people are not happy, right? So
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be a little bit more proactive then. So part of the reason why alts and griefers can do so much damage is because of how much the sandbox can let you do. What can be done in terms of the game's design to diminish malicious activity, as opposed to just a hard, things like squad lock and things. For instance, it's been talked about for intelligence, right? Someone could theoretically sit on the opposite faction and then just periodically take screenshots of intel with a radio on, and then they can send that to their buddies on some third-party Discord and all that. Maybe you could. Is it possible to limit how much intelligence you can access? So in terms of a more game design, a way of maybe limiting things, is there more proactive things that can be considered?
oh yeah, absolutely. And there's between that and like there's a whole spectrum of things, and I think that you know hearing those type of suggestions, we can try to action that, right? There's always trade offs because then there's going to be like you know the regular player who like, or maybe I won't say regular, but some player that um, you know wants to just see the whole world, and they're being
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things. That's the thing. It's like, do you want um, to turn a game that is supposed to be where the thing that is special about it is that everything's open, everything is shared, right? Um, do you want that freedom and that secret sauce taken away by the very minority number of perpetrators, right? It's like having, I mean, this is obviously a very exaggerated comparison, but if you have a free country, do you want like because there's a couple of criminals, you suddenly want to lock down everything and make
We're getting
everything
real
bad?
philosophical there.
No, but
Uh,
I mean, we are
I
getting
see what you mean.
philosophical, but at the same time, it's like it's really like I like see. This is one of those things where it's like I want to um, stress that it's I can only say what we're doing, right? And
Hmm.
we care about these things as much as everyone else. This game is our passion. Like, this isn't just a business where like we just hired a bunch of people and we're just like it's not like that. Like we care so deeply about this. Like everyone on the team will post about the state of the war when something bad happens on a Reddit. Like, yeah, it hits home, right? It's like it's not like you know we see these threads and we're like, man, that's a real bummer. Like, we worked so hard on all this and we put all our time and energy into it, and now because of like ultimately it's our fault and it's our mistake, right? It's our game. We made it. We have to own up to all the problems. So when we see that, we're like, oh damn, I guess we got to own up to this problem. And it sucks to hear this stuff. It sucks to hear when everyone's shouting at you. But we signed up for it, so it's like we just gotta deal with it, right? So when it goes to when it comes down to an issue of do you want to lock down the game, right? Do you want to add in, because like we could be heavy handed and say okay, everything's locked down now. We can like no intel is shared. Maybe the only way you get intel is if you're part of the clan and they vouched for you and all this stuff, right? We can do all that stuff, but then it wouldn't be Foxhole anymore, right? Like that one of like you don't want to kill the magic by this is the one, the big struggle that we have is like you don't want to problem solve your way into a game that's so streamlined that where nobody is having any issue, nobody's angry, because there's a lot of games like that you can play. There's like, go on Steam, there's like hundreds of games out there where everything's locked down, everything's behind a safety net, you can't even win a war because they don't want to upset any players with a losing side, right? But it's like we've chose to make the game for better or worse that is messy, right? um, but that's kind of what makes it special. That's why there was that Reddit thread that was posted this summer that was talking about the game. And when we read it, it was kind of like, we read bad things that kind of put us in a bad mood sometimes, and it sucks, right? Because we were already really stressed out. But then you read the good ones, right? And in that thread, it was talking about how, like, man, like this game isn't, there's nothing like it. The fact that everyone's just working together, everything's open. That's like completely blows my mind, right? And it's like, okay, do we want to make the game fully streamlined? Do we want to make it so that everything is locked down, everything is, there's no more?
Well, I don't think it has to be that extreme. I think you can devil's in the details. So more tools, maybe you can see what a player has driven, right? You can see, like, you can use the Alt
Exactly.
or F1.
No, I agree with you.
You can,
Yeah. So, oh yes, no.
Sorry, by Alt I mean Alt. Click on the person, and then the menu comes up, and you can see what they've driven. So if they've driven maybe five completely different battle tanks in the past 10 minutes, maybe that's suspicious, and you can or they can explain themselves.
I agree that the devil's in the details, and what I was describing was not it's one way or the other. What I was describing was more like these decisions. The point I was trying to get across was that, like, we don't take these decisions lightly, and we agonize over them a lot more than maybe like some people think, right? Like we agonize over, hey, we should let's take your suggestion, which I think is a really good suggestion and is an area that we want to explore in the future, right? But then if you poke at it a bit, then there's a problem of, okay, well, what if someone is doing something unusual, but it's because it's part of an operation or something, and it's legit, right? And now that person is could be targeted as an alt. They could be witch hunted. They could be, put in some sort of public forum, and now they're ostracized from the game when they were just trying to do something cool, right? And I'm not saying that's a reason to not implement that idea, but I'm saying that this is the kind of thing that we agonize over every day when it comes to this problem, right?
So what's the middle ground, right? Should people be confronting them, like going up to them and saying, like, "Hey, why are you doing this?" And then, does the person,
see, look,
is that part of the game? Is that part of the game design where someone goes, why are you moving 3 of these battle tanks seemingly to a random location? And then if the person doesn't want to disclose that, should they be reported? Should that open up a support ticket? And like, what's the recourse there, you think?
So I think that, talking is usually a good start. Right?
What if the person just doesn't want to have it? Is that on them, or is that like, what's the burden of proof?
Well, at the end of the day, I say it's always case by case. That's why we have to investigate every report. We have to look at the hard data.
And do you, when you do look at that data, do you talk to you? So you look at the data. So you look at maybe certain metrics that we don't have access to, but you can see through the many metrics that you have as a developer. But then, do you talk to the parties involved at all, or no? It's just through the data.
We look at the data, yeah.
But you do like have a discussion, like you message, this person, and then that person go, hey, what was your side of the story? What was your side of the story? Do you do that, or can you disclose that?
I'm not gonna talk about the
process,
the insights of that here. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's as far as we can. That I'll probably be able to get without going in without getting more into can't disclose. And yeah, we'll see what happens in a month. See what happens with the next big Reddit thread. And it may very well be, alts and griefing might very well be the most minuscule thing. But the perception is proven. Out of 674 votes, 241 people voted for it to be discussed. The first thing to be discussed. So we'll just have to see. We'll just have to keep on coming along
Oh,
with
we're
that.
gonna discuss it on the next one. Let's just be honest with each other.
Well, if it's even chosen to be a thing, I don't want every single one to have that discussion. Every single
Are
one
you
of these
sure?
things.
Are you sure
I
about that?
wouldn't. I think it's a waste of time. But we'll certainly touch it every now and then. But regardless, let's move on to the next thing, which you totally want to talk about, is the comms rating system. There have been lingering questions about the comms rating system from our previous discussion back in August. A couple things that I actually didn't, I could have poked on, but I actually didn't quite. So currently, there is no feedback for the poster on what gets downvoted or upvoted on. If I make a series of comments in World Chat, for instance, I don't know how each of those comments were received. And because I'm busy with other things over the course of several hours, I may not be aware of my failing comms rating for some time. Should there be more specific feedback beyond just opening up F1 and realizing, oh, hey, I'm in poor comms rating now? Should there be more specific, like, hey, this comment is the one that actually everyone seems to be downvoting on? Obviously I'm not going to see who's downvoting it, but just this comment or this map post was the one that people really didn't seem to like. I can see a result of that.
No, but I actually think that's a good idea. So you know,
It's kind of
um,
like how Reddit does it, or at least
yeah,
old Reddit. I
yeah.
don't
No,
use
I
Reddit
think
that much.
you know, why that idea is nice. Because it doesn't. So a long time ago, we this is like 5 years ago when the
Uh-huh.
game was like barely even a game, right? And the team was like a third of the size it was now, and it was more like a mod project if anything else.
Uh-huh.
But it like we had the system where you could reprimand someone, right?
Yes, I distinctly
And
remember that.
they would actually know who did it, and
Yeah.
that caused so much toxicity, right? So
I
I
actually
think like
reprimanded someone once
show
because I was like, there's no way
yeah
they'll know I'm reprimanding someone. Why would they put that in there? And then they
yeah
immediately knew who it was me. So yeah.
so so that was a bad idea, and we
Doesn't
learned
have to
from
be
that.
doesn't have to be known. It could be anonymous. So for instance,
Yeah, so
on Reddit, right, if I make a post, I can see, oh, 10 upvotes. Only 20% of all the votes have been upvotes, which means, oh, a lot more people didn't downvoted this than upvoted that. Some sort of specific feedback on, hey, this was the comment that people didn't seem to like. As it's like, so it's like, oh, they didn't mind me doing a meme, they didn't mind me making a joke, they didn't mind me saying go left or go here. They really didn't like when I said let's invest in this technology. People apparently didn't seem to like that. Some sort of feedback.
yeah, I I think that's a good I think that's a good approach, right? So
Yeah, and specifically with map posts and word by word, it's funny because you can spam a lot of things in World Chat in a very short amount of time. So that'd be a lot to track. But if it's already being tracked, some feedback I think would be helpful. Can you explain how a person with very poor comms, so they can open F1, they can clearly see they have poor comms, how do they get back in good graces? And I asked this last time, but we kind of moved on to other things. How do they get back in good graces? What are some methods?
yeah, yeah. So I think that you know, definitely if over time it will come back.
So it's
Um,
one point,
yeah,
one way is just maybe don't post anything for a while in the world chats, any kind of logi, intel,
yeah,
or world chat
and
group chat.
I won't talk about the internals,
Sure,
even though you're gonna continue to ask me about it, even though I tell you I'm not gonna talk about the
I have
internals.
to.
Um, is 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 that we saw some feedback there, and we actually made some changes um, to make that process a bit more what do you call it? To make it like not easier isn't the correct word, but to um, make it so that it's not as hard. Like if you do get to that point, right? The way out, I would just say, is there is another word than easier, but it just means
Yeah,
so many things that I don't want to say the word easier.
sure, sure.
But I'll say smoother, right? It's a
Okay.
smoother process. on your
Just
way
vague
now.
enough. Well, let me say this.
And like
Other than yeah, go ahead.
and that was an exact like I remember exactly that, and that's exactly the feedback, right? So it's like before, okay. You know what? I'm going to describe it a bit more because I know you just want to have more information, right? So I'm just going to give you some more, right?
Okay.
So it's like um, before, if you got to the point where you were low comms, to get out of it and to stay out was harder, right? And we
Mhm.
looked at that and we were like, okay, well, that's not our intention. We don't want it to be like that. So we made some changes such that when you get out of it, it is it is easier for you to stay out at least for some time, right?
Okay.
And that is that's an example of like looking at what people are saying and just behind the scenes, we're gonna tweak some stuff, we're gonna make it better, but we're not
And
gonna come out and
about
like
when was that
you
change
know
made? About when?
uh oh, maybe 1 to 2 updates ago. I
Okay.
It's kind of tough for me to remember because the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
update was such a long update cycle that it could have been even the last update.
Hmm.
But let me just say this: it was the last couple of months. Last maybe within the last like 2, 3, 4 months. I
Uh-huh.
really don't know. I have to look back, and that could have been it. Could have been the last update. It could have been the one before that. I don't have exactly the answer, right? But that's what I'm. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is what I'm talking about at the beginning, where it's like, um, that's the way it should work, right? Like we can see the feedback, and then we we do what we can. We can't like control what people are saying, and you know that's a futile way to spend your energy. So instead, we put our energy into actually making that change, right? And then we don't have to say anything, right? Like we don't have to say anything, and then we see if it gets better or not. And then that's what I'm talking about, and that's why it's you know that's as much as we can do.
There's a concern that people only really downvote comms they don't like and don't bother upvoting good comms by the same measure. So just like how you said in the last topic, when you have a problem, when there's a problem, people, go, they get their pitchforks and they make a billion Reddit threads, they write novels on it, go on the Discord, and they complain. But then when it's fixed, when something good happens, just complete silence. By that same, by that same design, people fear that that's the same thing that's happening with the comm system, where one bad turn of phrase, maybe it was misinterpreted or maybe it was bad, but then just one bad thing can get you downvoted into oblivion, hypothetically. But meanwhile, no one's upvoting the good stuff. It's like, hey, this is good
Yeah, no,
info.
it's a good.
You
Yeah,
did a good. I like what you're saying
no,
here.
no,
No one
I
really
think
bothers
that's a
doing
good.
that.
No, I think that's a. I think that's a good point. It's like, and I think that is a off common mistake, right? When it comes to dealing with moderation, it's like you want to encourage the good as much as you want to discourage the bad, right?
Mhm.
So, um, this is a good point, and I do think that it's worth thinking about. Yeah.
Is an upvote worth the same as a downvote?
Well, yeah, we can't talk about the internals.
Okay. Yeah. So.
When I give you the algorithm, and then you'll know exactly what to do to circumvent it. How about that?
Awesome.
Yeah.
In your view, how hesitant should people be when typing in the chats affected by the comms rating system? Because people are saying, well, now that there's this whole system where I might get penalized for saying stuff in global chat, world chat, I'm not going to want to type as much. Is that intended?
I don't think they should be worried based on. I had the number last time, and I mentioned it. So it's so astronomically low the number of people that are impacted by this that I don't think anyone. If you're not, if you're not like you know, I don't think the average. Let me just put it this way: I don't think
The,
the average player should be worried about typing.
the
Right?
numbers the number may be low, but could the people who are affected potentially be outsized? That they're They have a influence based on what needs to
It
be
could
said,
be.
what they think they need to be said over the global chats.
It could be. Yeah. No, you're right. It could be a very low number, and there could be there could be errors there. So
But
it's
could it be a
system's not
question
perfect.
of
Yeah.
politics as well, where it's like, yeah, well, this person is influential, but with influence comes controversy. What are people supposed to downvote?
So this
It's
is
yeah.
so you know, like I mentioned, the system is not perfect. So we do look at like if if you feel like that wasn't proper, we will look at the reports
Uh-huh.
um, on that, and like it's one of those things where um, it affects a very very small number of people. So it's like we gotta um, we gotta consider that. I don't think the certainly not the average. Far 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 from the average. We're talking about like you know in the thousands of people that are in the game. We're talking
Yeah,
about like
people forget that there's a lot more
you
people that
can
play the game than are
you
on Reddit.
can you can count them like you don't even have as many fingers as you can count,
Okay.
right?
So
This is
so
the kind of thing. So like
uh-huh.
I talked about it last time, and I remember I got worked up about it because of that number, right? And proportionate to the amount of energy that we're spending on it. But you know what? The the thing that I will um, the thing that I will say is that I do sympathize with, say, even if it is, just less than the you know, even though it's such a small number, right?
Uh-huh.
If you were just, if you weren't like, you know, explicitly, um, if you weren't explicitly
Affected.
uh, doing anything,
Oh,
like
okay.
if you weren't being like, you weren't saying anything racist, or you weren't like spamming, or you weren't doing any of that stuff. I do think that that is an issue, and I do think that we should take a look at it. But to preemptively answer the question that you're seeing that you're about to ask me, I think the answer to that is very similar to like what are you allowed to downvote on Reddit, and what are you allowed to like upvote, right?
Technically anything,
Um,
of course, that's the natural
and I
answer. But
think
like,
that
what is
you
intended,
know
right?
well, it's just the same intention. It's like surfacing. It's like trying to. So our systems are not, obviously that system is nowhere near like robust as Reddit, because that's their whole product, right?
Hmm.
They're, they're, they're they make it really robust. Um, but we're trying to get at a similar thing, right? Is that uh, the the things, you know, it's like we don't want to take away the capability of being able to type. Let me put it this way: we don't want to. We think that being able to talk to the whole world, again, going back to that thing, is one of the special things about Foxhole, right? Is that because we can just say, you know what, there is no more all chat, and then there's no more problem. Like, when you agree, if we took away all chat, this whole problem is gone, correct?
I think. I mean, I think that'd be
Because
cool, but
because be, because let me bring this up, right? Because comms rating only affects world chat,
mhm.
right? So I want to like I want to say this without being insensitive to the few people that it does affect, and I do see that as a problem. We do want to make it better, but I do want to emphasize that it's a very small handful of people, and the only thing it does, in case there's a misunderstanding of how the system works, is for these handful of people, it just stops them from typing into world chat, and that's it. They can type into regional chat. They can talk to the 100 people on their team in the regional chat if they're trying to coordinate something there, right? They're allowed to use their voice chat. They're allowed to use their local chat. The only thing it does for this very
They can
tiny
still use
percentage
squads. Can
number,
they still use squads?
yeah. So the only thing that the only thing that is happening here, right, is that for um, this very small. number of players, unfortunately, they're not able to talk to the whole world. So this is the way that we see it is like it's a privilege. Rather than saying you have to earn it, we just trust people off the bat, right? And the way we trust is we say the way I see it is you're handing a microphone. Imagine you're handing a microphone to anyone in front of an auditorium of 1,000 people, right? And the reason why we start to look into these systems is because before this system, we'd see a lot of cases where you basically be handing the microphone to someone who starts blurting out like terrible things, right? Or maybe it's not terrible, but they're spamming, and there isn't like you know there isn't a good way to mitigate that, right? And this is for the whole world, right? So if your intention, if you hand someone, if you have thousands of people, thousands and thousands of players playing the game every day, and then you're handing this mic to thousands of people to talk to those thousands of people, right? The chances are there's going to be someone who's going to abuse that mic, right? So it's like all we're saying is that we're just downsizing the mic down to your regional chat, and that's it. And like I want to reiterate, like I know I've said this 10 times. We're talking about number of people is you count on your hands.
Yeah, it's the perception though, right? It's the perception that it might because it's a mechanic for everyone. It might affect me, and am I being unduly because it is vague, right? We can't get into the internals, which I understand why, but it potentially can affect everyone. But you know what? This is congratulations, Siege Camp is now tackling the problems of social media. So hashtag Markfoot Zuckerberg is the problems that we're encountering here. So yeah, it's I don't know.
I mean, I'm fine to like here's the thing, like I don't like it's fine talking about it, but it's like the amount of energy, in my honest opinion, this is just like being extremely candid about it. It's like the amount of energy that is being expended, including right now,
Yeah.
versus a couple of people that they just can't talk in world chat. That's it. They can talk everywhere else in the game. They can play the entire game. They can
They
do
have access to
anything.
Discord and Reddit.
They have access to Discord. They have access to everything. And like, even then, I would say, even then, because like I want to say, I'm not trying to be insensitive to those few people where,
But that is how you see it.
like,
That is how you
right.
see it.
So it is. It's how we see it. But if you are one of those individuals, you have a recourse. You can submit a report, and then we'll take a look at it. Right. So it's not like even on top of all that, there is a recourse, and so it's like, is the amount of energy we're spending on this conversation really again, like it's fine.
I understand.
We can spend the next half hour talking about it, but you tell me, is that if you believe what I'm saying, right? Do you think that the amount of energy that we're spending here is appropriate?
I mean, I'm just going to leave it to the next 12 Reddit novels to decide that. So, and I'm kind of insulting them too. But again, this has been a thing ever since it was first implemented. Kind of like the alt and grief situation. It's just something I think that's going to have to be. It's kind of one and the same.
I don't think it's the same. Actually,
Okay.
I actually don't think it's the same. I feel like um, even though there is a similarity in terms of like a vocal minority, right? But I do feel like the um, the alt issue is, at least I can see, even though I don't uh, feel that, even though that there's a similar characteristic of it's the amount that you hear about it is proportionately larger than what most players will experience. So I do honestly feel that it's a similar type of proportion. At least though, for the alt problem, I can kind of like it's a serious, like the result of it is very serious, right? If something happened, if you were playing the game, something bad happened to you, it's very it's very serious, right? Like it can, if you're griefed, it's very, it's bad, right? But it's like not being able to, when you combine those small numbers with the fact that like all we're doing is like you just can't type into world chat, and then you, if you wait it out, you'll be fine, right? You see what I'm saying? So I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same. I feel like even though I don't like discussing, um, obviously neither of those topics are my favorite thing. I'd rather talk about
I mean, you've
cool,
talked about
fun
it for
things,
about 40
right?
minutes now, both of those things. So I think it's safe
Well,
to say you've given it a fair shot.
but like, here's the thing: if we were to pick the two, as much as neither of them are my favorite topics,
Yeah.
I feel like in terms of the energy spent, right, in the
Yeah.
proportion of the alt one, the energy I feel like is more worth it on the alt conversation. I feel like the comms rating one, I feel like we're sitting here talking about like
Uh-huh.
this little tiny thing. Uh, it's yeah.
Well, we'll see what the community takes from these two topics. Let's move on to something else here. Let's reset the momentum here. Border bases. Can you restate why frontier border bases exist? And for those who don't know, I'll link it link the wiki. The wiki is actually pretty good. I like the Foxhole fandom wiki for the border base and a bunch of other things that they have, as updated as those dedicated folks can make it. But for those who don't know, essentially what it is that you can claim a border base and get a building into the enemy's region just by claiming it. And then from there, you get a stockpile of items, including rifles, rifle ammunition, shirts, BMATs, and I believe HE grenades as well, and maybe some other things. And yeah, it's just by claiming it, you can get those. Can you restate why border bases exist?
Yeah, sure. So this is more of a developer visible problem. um, when before the border bases, when regions were locked down, by lockdown it means the entire region was taken over, but the one next to it was not. It would compound the queue problem, right? And this was a very like, I do want to stress that this was a very serious problem. Like, this is not something that is visible, unfortunately, to players other than them experiencing a queue. Um, let's take the basic case of you have a world where there's only three regions. Let's say it's a very small world. It's not the big one that we have
Okay.
now, right? But because it's just easier to like understand, right? So imagine your front line is three regions across, right? So if if that's supposed to fit like, you know, 6 to 800 players, right? Uh, let's just say servers can fit between 200 to 250 players each region, but let's simplify and say it's 200. So you have 600 people theoretically that can fit into your front line, right? If one of those frontline regions is locked down, you're down to 400, right? So if you're expected, it's always this balance between making the world not so big so that it feels too big to players, not making it too small so that there's queues. So we try to balance that. But it's difficult to balance when your front line can arbitrarily shrink from 600 to 400 or even 200. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the border bases force one side to push into the other region, thus forming a contested region, thus allowing players to join in from the home region. And this was a very, very bad, serious problem for a long time. Um, and and we and after the border bases came, it I didn't even think they would help this much. It was kind of one of those experiments of, hey, let's just try it and see if it works. This evolved from the old frontier bases. Um, the old frontier bases helped, but they were still too dependent on the player actually going to do it. So if you were in that situation where your front line shrunk down to 400 players instead of 600, but there was actually 600 players trying to get into the front, you have a queue of 200 people, and you're waiting for someone to go and build that frontier base to let the other 200 people in. So we said, okay, looking at the data, looking at that helps to some degree, but make it slightly less dependent on players, even though I hate that. But it's a balance of things, right? As everything else is in Foxhole.
So it sounds like a necessary evil, even though it's something that seemingly
Yes,
betrays
and
the
that's
sandbox. It's like, here's a bunch of free supplies. You just have to touch this
yes.
thing and you get it
Oh,
for free.
absolutely. It's a magical solution to a magical problem, right? It's a magical problem because in real life you don't have a border there, right? So that's the way we looked at it, is that you can't fix a magical problem sometimes without a magical solution. So the magical solution was, here's this funny border base that has all these supplies. But if the magical border wasn't there, then there'll be no need for it, and it'd
Yeah.
be great,
So it
right?
sounds like
And that's what we're
yeah.
yeah.
It sounds like the real solution then is just remove all the borders and make one mega server that can handle 3,000 or 5,000 players all in one go. But all that that dream aside, is there anything any kind of changes that can be made to maybe alleviate that seemingly cheapness of it? There's been a lot of suggestions thrown around. For instance, instead of simply claiming it and then it just appears there on the other side, maybe you need a CV to build. I don't know. What's your response to that? Maybe.
I mean, see, the hard thing about that is
Uh
when
huh.
you put a barrier there, then you're back to relying on someone to, like, it's kind of
Mm,
similar to when we just had the frontier base. And as you say, like, it's a necessary evil. It's like, it's like the queue itself, right? Like, the queue is a necessary evil. And as uh yeah, it's Foxhole, like I said from the beginning. Nobody wants to make this game because nobody wants to deal with all these problems, right? um, and and it just comes with territory, right? It just comes with
mm.
territory of y- you know. I could tell you that I'd have a lot less white hairs if we were working on a single player or co-op online game where, or even a PvP game that didn't have all these strange edge cases and you know
Yeah.
things of that sort, right?
So
So.
I'll keep chucking a couple of suggestions more at you. For instance, requiring the previous zone to be friendly before you can activate the border base on the other side of the region. You need at least the zone to be friendly while you're in it. Response to that?
It's again, it's like these suggestions are all adding in more constraints, but the constraints are the things that cause the problem in the first place, right?
Hmm.
So, but you know, we're always gonna, if that is a big issue, we'll take a look at the feedback and we'll see what can be improved, right? But
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's like the more barriers you put on, this is one of those difficult like problems that um, are, it's like a behind the scenes problem where you're stuck between two types of complaints, right? It's like this thing that you're talking about right now, but I don't even know if it's a complaint. It's more of a suggestion. If we were to turn it off, let's say swinging the other direction, then now you're back to the queues, and then we're hearing about the queues, right? So it's like, and I think that right now we're better than the other, right? So
No.
it's again that balance, just choosing the most optimal thing that you can, which won't be perfect.
Yeah. I hope people are catching on that I keep asking things anyway, so that way at least their suggestion gets heard and responded to, despite the answers being the same. But last one here: lowering maybe the starting stockpile, arbitrarily lowering however many numbers to maybe not be as severe, but allowing logistics personnel on the other side of the region border to drop things off, kind of revisiting that transfer base idea. Could that be seen as something that's a little more, a little less cheaper, but it's still earned somewhat?
Yeah, I really like that idea of the transfers. I think
You
I
did it
thought about that a
before,
couple
like
of
years
times.
ago, many years ago.
We never implemented it.
Oh,
We
okay.
we I think we put it on a dev blog or talked about it or something
Oh, okay, I
during
think
the
that's what
early
I saw.
days. But yeah, I think that's a cool idea, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to another topic here: player sharing slash dispute resolution. So we're not talking about reporting things for griefing or banning or anything like that. What we're talking about is how two groups of players who are on the same team but don't necessarily agree on how to approach something, how are they supposed to resolve these disputes? So let's take, for example, resource fields. I guess we'll start with one, which is we'll start with a hypothetical. Is it legal? And by legal, I mean I guess code of conduct, right? Is it legal for a group to claim a resource field and prevent anyone else from extracting resources from it? Is that quote unquote legal within the code of conduct?
Um, you you should work with your team. That's it. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Because there's
Yeah.
no way to claim. There's no way to physically prevent someone from extracting those resources.
It's like
Other than
it's
shooting them.
always see like that's we're gonna be here for 3 hours going down a rabbit
Sure.
hole if you want to start here, right? But just to poke at this at the surface level, right? It is okay. I made a wall around some resources, right?
Right.
You come to me and you're like, hey, you're breaking the code of conduct because you're not working with me, right? Or because you're trying to do this. And then I don't say anything, right? Um, and then you think that's unfair, you think this is a problem, and then I'm saying I'm protecting this field, and I totally am trying to protect it and I'm legitimately trying to help my team, right? And this is why, like, everything, like, these things have to be case by case. We need to look at the context, right? So it's like, but it's it, the problem is more complex in Foxhole because of everything is shared. But I mean, like, these things happen in other games. Like what is the if you're playing, a shooter, a team based shooter, and somebody goes off into the corner and does something like different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone might treat that as you're griefing your team, right? Like, like, you tell me if we're playing if we're playing a class based arena shooter, or even not that. If I'm playing like an MMO in a raid,
Yeah.
and I'm a healer, right? And I go in and then I use it's a high stakes. We're going through a high stakes raid or like a dungeon, and I decide to take out my sword as a healer and I start whacking things and playing like a tank, right? Um, and then the rules are that you shouldn't grief your team. But let's say that's on the code of conduct. You tell me, what's the resolution there? What is that person griefing? Maybe that's their play style, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why, like, when you say it's fair that it's you need to look at as much context as you can, or do you think there should just be a blanket rule? I'm actually really curious to hear how you feel about this.
Okay, so my opinion is that it depends on what the game mechanics are, right? So if there was a way, I'm not saying there should be, but if there was a way to set a node for taking this scenario, like a resource field and a node to say, hey, literally, if you try and swing your hammer at this, it won't give you the resource. Then if there's a way to do that, then yeah, you can legally claim it. And again, when I say legally, I mean code of conduct. But yeah, then you can legally claim it. But because there is no way to do that, then the only thing stopping you from the only thing stopping other people from getting to what you have claimed is yours is for them to go through it somehow. So either go, because now we have barbed wire, we have walls, and we have barbed wire walls as well. So there is a way to kind of close that off. There is the stockpile. There's the regimental stockpile in the squad one, right?
You mean
But
you mean the reserve stockpiles?
Sorry, yes, thank you. The
Yeah.
reserve stockpiles. So on that level, there is that. But in terms of just the resource field, because there's a lot of stories, and I've seen it firsthand. A lot of people racing to these component fields, and
Yeah.
it's a game of hungry hippos, and it can get ugly sometimes, verbally,
Yeah.
and then
And
sometimes by action.
like it's what I was saying. It's what I was saying before, right? About Foxhole is one of the only games, if not the only one, where you're expected to work with hundreds of players on your team, right?
Mhm.
And there's you're gonna ruffle people's feathers. There's gonna be problems, and you know, like it's we gotta make things better without destroying, you know, without destroying the what makes it good. Like you understand that struggle there. It's like
Mhm.
it's a constant struggle of um, you know, I probably have spent hundreds of hours internally in internal design discussions about you know solutions to these sorts of things and how that might ruin the game and ruin the special thing about um, you know it's because you got to look at the opposite as well, and this is what we try to do too, because believe me, it's the same kind of suggestions and the same kind of concerns are echoed inside the team. So it's like a lot of these things that you're bringing up and that um, we hear about on the Reddit. It's like we hear from it from our own team members too, right? I mean, my like people hear, like Max hears about it from me. I hear about it from him. Like we hear about it from like Matt and other people, and it's like um, it it it's like it's a it's a problem. We burn these hours on conversations like, okay, well, why don't we just do this, right? This seems easy. Just go and do this simple thing. And it's like, oh, but then, what impact is that going to have? Are we sure we want to do that? Is that going to is
Yeah.
that going to take away that special thing of the game? And we spend we
Yeah.
agonize
No,
over this stuff
I
so
get that. No,
much, right? Yeah.
I believe you 100%. I think when it comes down to the nitty gritty. So, for instance, if two groups of players come in let's just say at the same time, and they start playing a game of Hungry Hungry Hippos. Let's say it's 10 and 10. So you can exhaust this field pretty quickly, faster than the big thing can spit it out. Naturally, there's going to be some, as you said, ruffled feathers. That is part of the game's design. So that people are going to get upset. That's going to be part of the game's design. What are the in-game avenues for players to resolve disputes? And let's state the obvious here. So there's the in-game chat, right? There's text as well, in-game text. I guess we'll stick to the in-game design. So I was going to say like Discord and maybe some things behind the scenes there, but that's third party. Are there any other intended mechanics that might play into that?
Um, n- Honestly, it's a team based game,
Yeah,
and you just got to figure out how to. Going
just
back to
figure it
that World
out.
of War. Well, no, it's not like if you go back to that World of Warcraft example, right? If your
Uh-huh.
healer is trying to play as a tank, what's your recourse there?
In that specific raid, people would say, "Well, just kick him, or don't play
I
with
don't
him
know. Are you
anymore."
allowed to kick? Like, is that a thing in?
I
Because
don't,
I don't think
I don't know
that's
about World of
allowed in,
Warcraft specifically.
right? So it's like, but it's like, or even like Overwatch match, right? Like if you're trying to, like it's like I think you're just
You just
you,
deal with it.
well, you have to work. It's you're you're playing. Look at it this way: in a cooperative game, if people are not cooperative, then there's not much. That's just there's only so many things you can do, right? And but to be fair to your point, though, right, and to sort of argue against what I'm saying is that um, those are two different types of games,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, I was going to
and
say
maybe I'm
because
giving and maybe I'm giving a bit of a bad example, but the the thing that I'm trying to get at is like um, I will say that these problems are harder to solve in Foxhole than it would be in World. It's the same problem fundamentally, and I think that was the point I was trying to get
yeah,
across. It's the same problem fundamentally, um, but it is more. It's just more intense and more complex in Foxhole because your team isn't a raiding party of 5 players or 10 or whatever you have it. Your raiding party in this case is like 1,000 people, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, because
So
it's not like
so
Team
it's
Fortress 2, where if someone's,
right, but
completely, playing the game wrong, but not technically breaking the rules, then
right,
the whole
but
team
it's
can
like,
just kick them. Whereas in
but
Foxhole,
yeah,
it's like, well, he's not technically breaking code of conduct, so we can't really. He's just making poor strategic decisions. We have to work, because that guy's going to be there tomorrow. It's an open sandbox game. They
for
can go
sure,
anywhere.
it's like your team is bigger, the session is longer, even a ruined raid is like at most like a couple of hours or something, right?
Yeah, Foxhole has
Um,
proven to be 35
it's like
days or more.
yeah, so it's like it isn't. It's a fair comparison, I think, in terms of the fundamental, like the fundamental situation, right? Which is that you're expected to work with your team, and you're disagreeing on what working together is. But where it differs is the scale and the scope.
Yeah. So
That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, right?
yeah, yeah, I get you. And so in that scenario where two groups of 10 people are fighting over resources, you would say work it out verbally, work it out, in text, make a case. Just work faster than the other person. Whoever has more equipment, whoever's the faster scrapper, that person it gets the most scrap.
Well,
But
I mean,
it
isn't the
cannot break
same
code of conduct then. So
right? But
so hard no is don't shoot each other if you're on the same team.
well, I mean, let's expand that further, right? You know what? I'm going to push into this, and I'm going to
Okay.
make your job easier, and I'm going to bring up the hard questions. How about that?
Sure.
Right? How's that sound?
Sure. Sounds good.
Right. So what if you're trying to build a sandbag wall, and the person next to you doesn't think that's a good idea? Isn't that a similar issue?
Yep.
Like, isn't that fundamentally a similar issue? Right. So there's a lot of these issues, but I keep harping on that. Like we have to we have to be okay with some of them in order to keep Foxhole as Foxhole, right? And that doesn't mean that we can't try to make things better, um, through like improving in-game features and trying to be proactive in ways that we can. But it's like at the end of the day, if 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 you want to play a game where you're working with a thousand players, we're trying to deliver that experience the best we can, and it's we have to just solve these issues as they come, right? And we've been solving them for 5 years. Like this is not this this is been a long journey from the very first day when we launched. I could tell you the story from the very first day. I remember very vividly. First day Foxhole went online with the combat prototype, right? The moment it went online, people started shooting each other on their own team within like 15 minutes. I'm not even kidding you. Within
I
15
believe it.
minutes,
I believe it.
right? And then we had to implement a system. The ancient. There's no longer like this is like an ancient system of like we had to manually have a ban, right?
Yeah.
And there was nothing in the game except the ban that we could go in and type in a command and we could ban someone, and that got us through the first night, right? It's almost like a survival game. What gets us through the first night? That got us through the first night. Um, and then from that point forward, it's been a 5 year journey of like, okay, what is the next problem that happens when you give people incredible freedom? What's the next problem? Okay, well now there's alt accounts, and then now there's this, and now there's people shouting in chat, people being racist, people doing this, doing that, and it's just been, it's just we're just doing what we've always done, which is just look at what people are talking about, look at the things people are concerned about, and we're just gonna there's not much more, right? We're, I don't want to get too far into it, but I just feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's it, it is like um, when you boil it down to it, we love the game. We're we're not. These things tear us up as much as it tears uh, you guys up, and we're just trying our best at it. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. It's not perfect, right? And we recognize that. Um, you know, it's not perfect, and you know it's just it's a hard game to make. I know I've said that like 10 times
Mhm.
now, but it's just a hard game to make, and you know but we're still going to make it, and we're still going to make it for the next many years, and we have a lot of cool stuff to add in the game. And it's just two choices. You keep going despite all this, work on all the cool stuff, or you just say, you know what, we don't want to work on it anymore. But don't worry, we are. So you know.
I want to with all the scenarios I might have thrown out there. I want to go to the most extreme, which is the use of the rockets, the rocket targeting. Let's say one group wants to hit a town with a rocket, and they have control of that rocket, but the rest of the faction overwhelmingly disagrees. That absolutely they're spamming in chat. Don't do this. This is they're just shouting at them. This is a horrible idea. This is going to hurt us. But the tiny group in question has the trigger. Should that tiny is not so much a problem to be solved, but more so a hypothetical. Should that small group have the right to supersede seemingly the rest of the faction, and launch their rocket?
There's a whole 3-hour documentary on this one. You know that. Just go watch that, man. You need me to tell you, man.
Yeah. So I guess that's the same. Yeah. All right. Do you have time for another one?
I'll do one more.
Okay. Sorry for those.
It's cool. If it's a cool question this time.
Oh, jeez. Well, it's about pillboxes. I don't know if that's cool to you.
Sure.
And it's not their design, but with a plethora.
No, I have it. It's like pillboxes. What do you do in a moderation situation if you put down a pillbox and someone doesn't agree where you put it? Is that what you're gonna ask?
No. Sorry, this is actually a whole new thing. With a plethora of new and improved options for the trench and bunker system in the last major update, can you state the purpose of the new pillboxes, which are separate from that system? They don't connect to the trenches. You don't. I don't think you build them with a shovel. If I'm not correct, I've actually just stick completely to trenches. I have not built a single pillboxes. I am all in on those trenches. But can you state the purpose? Restate the purpose of the pillboxes?
Yeah, so we actually want to get rid of the foxholes or replace them because they were so old. And
by foxholes, you mean the old foxholes, the one with the tarp?
The old foxholes, yes. And the gun turrets, they're like the oldest AI defenses in the game. And
right.
And we had thought about the idea of just tearing off the band-aid there and just making bunkers the only thing, because I do like how it makes a lot of sense that your AI only works if it's connected through a trench. That kind of makes very tactile sense, right? But there's an argument of maybe we should have gone that route. I don't know, right? It's a good.
I think you can go that route. Personally, I think you can go that route for the next update. I think you slowly put the band-aid off now.
I mean, you know what's great? A lot of people don't like them, right? The spam, but here's the thing, right? The reason why it was difficult is because there's a lot of edge cases, right? Okay, well, what do you do in a town, right? In a town like abandoned ward, if you just want to put more defenses there and you can't build the garrison houses, or garrison houses are not enough, right? There's a blind spot. Someone can sneak in and satchel your stuff, right? So, and then there's also the case of what if you're doing a beach landing, right? You don't have time to dig all these trenches, and every second is counts in a beach landing, right? So that's why.
Would an attacker, would an amphibious attacker make pillboxes anyway? Wouldn't that be their job? In historical sense, I don't think they're building pillboxes. I think they're just pushing it as deep as they possibly can.
Oh yeah, that would be ideal, right? I'm not going to argue that historically that it'd be cool if we didn't, but the reality is that the beach landings are already hard enough to pull off.
That's true.
And AI defenses we've seen them being built a lot during the beach landings, and so we felt like the game wasn't ready to tear that one off yet.
Okay.
Right. But man, I do. Well, there's actually a lot more to it. It's like there's also this it's yeah, it's just these edge cases that were there. But man, talking about it, the reason why it's kind of tearing me up a bit is because I think there is a more elegant, possibly I'll say, right? There's possibly an elegant solution of just the trenches and the bunkers, but players rely on this flexibility of being able to place them anywhere so much that it's something that
Yeah,
we haven't got rid of yet. But it's a very tempting thought,
I
you
think
know.
what I've personally noticed, and builders listening, you put in the chat, you tell us. But personally, I've seen that the pillboxes. I should say, not at the start of the war. So this is mid to late war where we are now. Mid to late war, pillboxes are put down to make up for the deficiencies that
Like the blind
trenches
spots,
can't. Exactly. And
blind spot.
I think that really just points to uh, the things we have yet to implement, the many quality of life things that the trench system still needs done. Like for instance, just last night, I was trying to help build someone with something, and I realized that, oh yeah, you can only connect trenches at the middle. You can't do, because like a trench is a regular trench, not a connecting trench. A regular trench is in three parts, right? You can't do a 90-degree angle. It has to be a T-bone, and that's super
Yeah,
frustrating.
the new the have you tried the new connectors though? It kind of mitigates that a lot now because you can just drag it across and it scales, right?
Yes, but I think, well, part of the
I mean, I
problem.
think it would be better if there was a 90-degree angle. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, no, yeah, and you're right. I mean, part of the reason why I think people don't like using connector trenches at all, and again, I'm speaking anecdotally, is that you can't put a cap on them. But that, for instance, you can't put barbed wire at the end of a connecting trench. But of course you can't, because it's a connecting trench. And I don't know if that's just more of the player base needs to learn how to do that. And yeah, sorry. The point I'm really trying to make is that I think for mid to late war, pillboxes are put down, are put in place where the bunker and trench system is failing, or rather has blind spots and still needs some improvement. Now the early war, I think that's actually where pillboxes really became apparent, really were apparent. They were
well, they
just getting
were
spammed. Yeah,
well, they were also improperly balanced, and we patched that.
that's also true. Yeah, but the
Yeah,
33%.
yeah. No, they were. It got past the dev branch, and we usually don't like patching balance things in the middle of war, but I think in that case it was just, I think everybody agreed with it. I don't think anybody complained about that one. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I don't. I think in general, I think that the AI spam could be. I'd like to look for ways to allow people to defend their things, because people also we keep we get a lot of see. Here's the thing: we get a lot of feedback when players are not able to defend their things. They'll be like, "Man, like this sucked. I walked away and then I lost all my things." Right?
Yeah.
I'd like to like find. I think there's room to move the balance a bit from like, okay, there's too much spam, and then there's like people could still protect their stuff, right? I would like to add. I hope we can have a bit more fluidity there now, right? It's a constantly changing thing. The game's always changing. We just released the building update, so naturally there's going to be a bit more of a defensive type of gameplay, right?
Mhm.
But I think that I would like there to be more opportunities for people to do more things in the mid war, right? Whereas maybe too much abundance of AI is preventing some of that, right?
Yeah, and with yeah, I don't know. Getting to the mid war, I think was interesting because those opening, I forget, is it what the first 2 weeks, maybe just the 1 week with that opening, where, it's that joke where someone just posts a screenshot, not a GIF, but a screenshot of, like, here's the first 100 days of the war, and they just post a screenshot of just that line through the middle, and nothing's happening because it's a screenshot. I'm actually okay with that personally. I don't mind it being a stalemate. I think the problem was
No,
just,
yeah,
yeah. I just think it was just pillboxes instead of the intended update entrenched. and having.
Oh yeah. No, but that resolved itself really quickly after the hotfix rolled out.
Yeah, I think it did.
was
Looking from
yeah.
where it is now.
And I think the next war will be interesting, because it's this one was north. This one on live one was on north south.
Uh,
So I think that's like inherently the most stalemate you can get because of the river,
yeah.
right? So I think anything, it's funny because these things change so quickly. You could change the layout of the war, and suddenly it's like, oh, well, the war ended after 4 days. The wars are too short, guys, and then everybody. But that's the thing, I think. I think.
But I think you like the idea of having a short war so long as it feels earned.
Well, I like every war to not be this, not every war to feel the same, right? And I think that it's like it's something we're constantly. It's like this. I want to end off with this, right?
Uh-huh.
And this is kind of the theme of this very uncomfortable show that you've invited me to this time. But I think this is a good theme, right? And it's going to talk about is that Foxhole is a messy game, and it has a lot of edge cases. It has a lot of quirks that you don't see in other games. That's what makes it special, right? And every single time we found that we've tried to streamline the game, we've tried to more too aggressively overcorrect for these problems, right? We've always taken away a piece of what is special, right? And this happens a lot of times. I will, like I'll go to Max, or Max will go to me, or we'll talk to like another team member, and we'll say, "Man, you know what? I agree with you. That's going to solve this problem. That's going to make our lives less painful. It's going to give us more nights where we can sleep, but it's going to make it a little bit less special, right?" And then we think about it, and we're like, I'm like, you know what? I fucking hate that you're right about that, Max. I'm like, all right, let's keep it this way. Let's have more sleepless nights, but let's keep the thing that's special. And I think at the end of the day, that kind of sums up how I feel about like 90% of the topics that we talked about here.
I don't know why you're making it sound so hard. Just fix it. I don't just fix it. All right, hey, let's call it there because I think I know I'm getting fatigued. To the dozens of people that messaged me saying, "Hey, just ask this question. It's so simple." Well, here's your very simple answers. Hey, no, seriously, Mark. Thank you again for taking the time off the clock to answer these questions that. Questions and with answers that easily won't satisfy many. But I think it's good that we're at least hopefully we're making some headway on some of these issues, and at least from topically and how people talk about them. And maybe people will. I actually noticed people are linking. We're linking a lot the last discussion, so maybe they'll link a lot of this one too, and maybe we'll advance something. And we will talk. I want to talk about. I really, really, really want to talk about weather. I'm actually really disappointed that weather was last on the poll, but we'll talk about that first. Whenever we get around to doing another one of these, hopefully it won't be 3 months, and we'll get around to a Zero Dark PressCorps as well. But Mark, thank you so much for taking the time off the clock to answer these questions for the community.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
For the PressCorps, I'm Geoffrey Jennings. Good night and good fight.
The PressCorps is a non-profit creative collective of artists, reporters, and players from the MMO video game Foxhole by Siege Camp. Our mission is to engross our audience in and amplify the stories of this unique war ecosystem. The PressCorps was founded in early 2018 by former PlanetSide 2 Radio Free Araxis host, Captain in Arms. It is a separate community entity and is in no way representative of Siege Camp. For more information, visit the PressCorps Discord through the link below.